Hey, Dr. Robertson.
Hey, Dr. Mosley, how are you today?
Doing pretty good. Doing pretty good. What are we talking about today?
Today, we're going to be talking about the marketing environment, what that means, and ethical behavior and social responsibility and how those two tie together.
Sounds good.
Yeah, yeah. So, why don't we go ahead and get started? Okay, so I said the first thing we're going to talk about is the marketing environment. So, how do we know what's in our environment? This is one of those really simple ideas that when you hear it explained, it's like, well, I know that, but there's a name for it. So we all do what's called environmental scanning, which is where we look around and kind of examine what are the trends, what's going on, what's going to affect my business in the future. And when you plan a business, you have to do this. You need to kind of look and see, what are the things out there that are going to have an influence on my way of doing business. Because if I know those things, then I can start planning for them and I can treat them as opportunities so that I can make money.
Makes sense.
So some of the trends or things that are kind of going on now, brand advocates, which is basically like the creation of influencers, the social media influencers. A lot of marketing is done this way. It's a style of marketing that didn't exist, in this form 10 years ago, really. But it's an important way of getting a message out. I always ask when we do this class in person, I always ask the women if they've ever watched any makeup tutorials on YouTube.
Oh,
Pat, have
I,
you
I
ever watched?
do all the time. I mean, this doesn't happen by itself.
Yeah. So, all those people that are out there showing you how to do makeup tutorials, they're given the materials by the company usually, or that's what they're working towards. And then they start to get compensated for what they're doing.
Yeah.
And the thing is, those people, you find someone, for instance, on YouTube that you trust, you like their style or whatever, they have an influence, they can influence that market.
Hmm.
Other, trends to be aware of, the advent of both virtual and augmented reality. Uh,
Yeah. This is huge. I mean, in hospitality, you know, outside of marketing, my area, virtual and augmented is huge. So,
yeah. And so with things like augmented reality, where you are integrating both a virtual experience with the real world, they're happening at the same time together. Some of the possibilities are almost limitless. The ones that I find particularly interesting. The first time I ever saw this, you could go to the Lego store, and they have a screen there, and you pick a box up of a Lego kit and you put it next to the screen. It scans the code, and you look at the screen and you can see the model, and you can turn it and manipulate it. So you can look at it from all the different angles and how it's assembled. It's really,
that is pretty cool.
last
Yeah.
trend, that you is going on right now, something that has an effect or will have an effect, is the gig economy. And this is things like Uber and oh, Matt, what's the one where people stay in your house?
Airbnb.
Airbnb. Thank you.
Hmm.
So this is the gig economy, where people are using their own resources to make money in a way where they're using excess capacity. And
Yeah.
you're not an employee; you're just doing one job.
Well, yeah, you're an independent contractor for the most part, especially with like Lyft and Uber.
Right. So another trend, and you think about, how is this going to affect my business? So there are all sorts of forces out there that are acting on us, and we have to kind of figure out how we're going to respond to them. We have forces like our suppliers. If the prices for supplies go up, that's going to affect my business. So my relationship with my suppliers has an effect. My relationship with my customers has an effect. If you have a particularly close, strong customer base, that's a resource. All sorts of amazing things are capable, versus if you have like more of an anonymous relationship with your customers. And then there are, just all sorts of forces, and we'll talk about these: social, economic, technical, competitive, and regulatory. All these are things outside that affect our business that we have to respond to. So first social force, demographics. And demographics, these are things we can put numbers to describe people.
Yeah.
So just some kind of basic ways the world is changing. The population is growing. We have 7.5 billion people in the world now. Anticipate almost 10 billion by the year 2050. Will that have an effect on the way?
Well, it will. I mean, as right now, the boomers are slowly, how do we put this politely, but dying out. They're aging out, where
Right.
their influence on the spending that really matters is going away. Gen X is slowly taking that over. Right behind it is the millennials, Gen Y, and Gen Z, which is now our college students. Really, they're going to be changing the way things are going for years to come.
They have different patterns of behavior.
Yeah.
So here are some demographics that are currently having an effect, and the effect is going to grow. So, India and China both have very large populations, and their populations are growing. So between the two countries, we're looking at 3 billion people by the year 2050. Now, one of the things, I'll tell you some ways that we're starting to feel this effect, or at least, me personally. The side effect of this growing population, both in China and India, is a growing middle class. Well, as the middle class gets bigger, what defines middle class? A large part of being middle class is the things you buy. So people in these countries want to buy the signifiers of middle class success. And one of those signifiers is whiskey. And so the effect of having a growing middle class is that the price of whiskey, particularly Scotch, has grown. So as more people in India, more people in China want to buy Scotch whiskey, well, there's only a limited amount. Scotch whiskey can only be made in Scotland. There are only so many bottles that can be barreled or bottled in a year. And as such, the supply is limited, demand increases. Economics tells us the price is going to go up.
Yeah.
This is a demographic trend. A good bottle of Scotch whiskey now tops $100.
Oofta.
And as that goes up, what people have done, there's been this transition, as like the premium whiskey to bourbon. Well, what do we see now? Bourbon prices are going up for the same reason.
And so I'm sure they'll pick another type of spirits to go to soon. So
sure. And, it's also, there's only so much of it that can be made. It takes years to process. You can't instantly create it.
True.
Okay. So, you talked about the generation. So here's a quick chart of some of them and how they break out. The baby boomers, huge numbers, there's so many of them. One way that they're talking about here is 10,000 of them retire a day. So as we have this gigantic population that is retiring, what business opportunities present themselves?
Well, anything targeted towards retirees and, the cruises around the world that a lot of them like to take now and things like that.
Yeah. Retirement things having to do with healthcare, things having to do with personal appearance stuff like plastic surgery. All these are increasing, driven largely by the baby boomers.
Again, this doesn't happen on its own, so I get it.
And we have different ads that are designed to appeal to different people. So if you look at the ad on the far left there, Matt, the retirement is based, what age group is this being aimed at?
That's straight up boomer. That, the 65 plus retirement.
But he's still cool with his guitar.
Of course he is.
Got his countercultural 60s cred. But, the middle ad is talking more about technology. This is, being aimed at a younger demographic, probably Gen Y. What about the one with the woman on the right running?
Yeah, it's definitely not my demographic. Exercising, that'll kill you faster than anything else. That looks kind of like our generation, to be honest.
Yeah, it's actually, I would say Gen X or Gen Y, somewhere in there, somewhere 35 to 45 years old, it looks like. So, we design ads to appeal to different groups to achieve different things. Let's see. So we also have trends, having to do with, another change demographically is the racial and ethnic makeup. As you know, we're a country of immigrants. We have more people coming in. We have people. The racial makeup of the population changes over time, and advertising changes to reflect the changes in markets.
Yeah, that's the great thing about this country is that we're a melting pot, so things do change. I remember growing up, there is very few ethnic restaurants of any kind other than Italian
Well, you
around.
grew up in South Dakota.
What can I say? I can clearly remember it was in like '94 when we got our first Chinese restaurant that was, obviously Americanized.
Right.
So,
Social forces affect business, and we have to respond to them. So there are just some things like the roles of men and women. So like gender stereotypes. It wasn't that long ago that women could actually, when they got married, were forced to retire from their jobs because men were considered to be the breadwinner for the household. So if you got married woman, you gave up your job. And
my wife makes more than me. I don't want that.
Yeah, and I'm not talking about this was purely societal pressure. It was your employer would fire you. You were expected to quit. Fashion changes, what careers are acceptable, the roles of women in sports.
Like the women's soccer team for the U.S. just completely dominates the men's soccer team.
Right. So again, all these things have influence on the way changes in society that are happening outside have an effect on how we're going to market our products. Culture, culture being like the values and ideas or attitudes shared by members of the group. This is also a social force that we have to deal with, and we have to kind of accept these things change over time. Matt, I have a question for you. Do you pay a lot of attention to whether or not you're wearing white shoes after Labor Day?
Never. I mean, I got an Iggy Pop shirt on and some Walmart shorts. I think I'm pretty cultural,
I think for a college professor, that's unacceptable attire. In my day, you had to wear a button down and a tie and a coat with patches on the elbow. But those things change over time, and those are values. That's part of the culture. What's an acceptable color for a wedding dress? That's a cultural value. Is it acceptable to marry a man if you're a man? That's a cultural value, and these things kind of ebb and wane and change over time. Another force that can affect our business decisions, we have to be aware of what's going on, is the economy. So this is money, the economy, all the income, all the expenditures, all the resources. We have to kind of be aware of what's going on in this larger picture. Macroeconomics, we're looking at kind of the big picture, like the totality of the country, totality of the world's economics. So here we have issues like inflation. Mm-hmm. Inflation is that your money becomes less valuable over time.
Yeah.
When you hear your parents talk about they bought their first car and paid $5,000 for it, or they bought a house and paid $20,000,
or they worked a part-time job during summer and paid for college because that's the way it used to be in the 70s.
Yeah. And so a lot of this is due to inflation. Money becomes devalued over time. It's worth less. Prices increase, and just the value of money changes.
Mm-hmm.
So macroeconomics is this big picture. Microeconomics, this is kind of your personal economics. How much money do I have in my account?
Yeah.
So and we have three concepts that are really important. Gross income, it's all the money I take in. Mm-hmm. Disposable income.
Well, that's just the money that I can spend on something.
Yeah, and then discretionary income is the money that I get to spend on things I want, where I have choices to make.
Yeah.
And I said that right. It's not exactly things I want, but matters where I have choices. Like I have to buy food, but how I spend my food dollar, there's a lot of variation. Do I buy Starbucks or do I buy a 50-pound bag of rice?
Yeah, do I get the boar's head shaved meat, or do I buy the what's that stuff that comes in a small bag, right? The really cheap stuff, which I usually get.
Technology, another
Yeah.
force changing the economy, that changes the way businesses are done. We have to be aware of AI. Now, this one, right? I read an article in about 2017. I started talking about it in my classes, and I'm kind of curious always about how it plays out. But the article said that by the year 2020, the average American would have more conversations with AIs than they would with their significant other in a day. So, do you think that's true, Matt? Do you have more conversations with an AI than your significant other on a typical day?
I would say no, but I mean,
Now,
if I have to call up, say, a cable company and talk to their damn thing, that's going to take hours.
yeah,
So
well,
maybe.
yeah, that's the thing. So, if you call and get your prescriptions refilled, do you talk to a person?
Typically, no. No,
Oh,
you usually punch in your numbers and tell them
you have a customer service complaint with your cell phone. Do you talk to a person?
only after pressing zero and
And dealing with
a
a phone tree.
bunch. Yeah,
And
just
that's an AI. That's
yeah.
an artificial intelligence. Um, when you do you ever use Siri or Alexa?
Yes, I do. I use Alexa to turn off and on my light in my office. So
So right there, if you
yeah,
count up the total number of interactions you have with these AIs
yeah,
versus how many times you talk to your wife on the phone in the day,
yeah.
it may, I think it may be true.
Oh,
Automation is another big, huge trend. Driverless cars. Uh, you
can't
know,
wait.
this is one that's absolutely going to fundamentally change the world, uh, because for many people, if I don't have a lot of other skills, a good living can be made as a truck driver. Um, that's a skill I can learn, and I can make a good living at it. Yeah. But now, if the truck drives itself,
I still feel like they're gonna need somebody there in case a tire blows or something like that.
well, yeah, and that's
The
like
the
the Google.
role of the truck driver is gonna change.
Well, it's like the Google cars now, the ones that do all the Google Street View.
Yeah,
Those cars are automated, but the law requires they have to have someone sitting in the seat while
yeah,
the cars go. But they're essentially automated cars.
yeah,
The difficulty with automation of cars is if you have just humans on the road, you can, then humans are responsible. If you have just automated vehicles on the road, then you can program them to behave a certain way.
yeah.
But when you mix the two with humans and driverless cars, it becomes incredibly difficult it's a difficult problem to sort.
Yeah, humans are hard to program for.
Yeah.
They're too unpredictable.
Yeah. Another technology change, the Internet of Things, which is the integration of wireless technology into almost every area of life. So, do you have a refrigerator that has a computer screen on it?
No, thankfully, I don't trust those.
They're very common, and they can do some amazing
Yeah.
things. Like some of them actually have readers on them. So as you put products in, you can scan them, and they will tell you when things in your refrigerator are out of date.
Which is, I mean, it's wonderful and disturbing at the same time. But it would be nice to be at the store and be like, well, how much milk do I have left?
But also, what you're going to get is, because you're going to have to sign a user agreement, is you're going to go up to your refrigerator one morning, and it's going to say, hey, they're going to show you a commercial for milk, just like when you pump gas at the gas station.
Yeah, I don't want that.
Yeah.
Not at home. Yeah, well, wearable technology, right?
Yes.
I mean, the Google Glass, the Apple Watch, which I personally like a lot.
Yeah.
That's been huge. They've always had watches that could do stuff. I remember the calculator watch or the little TV watch back in the 80s that only the rich kids had. But The wearable technology has really come along.
Yeah, where I see a really rapid change in just the last 3 or 4 years with the wearable technology is in electronic health monitors. Because I'm a guy who spent a fair amount of time in the gym using a heart rate monitor and stuff like that. And so much of what the technology that I just used a few years ago, I cannot get replacement parts for. I can't integrate it into some of the things I like to do because everything has gone towards like smartwatches.
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, that's why I got this initially, was the heart rate stuff.
Yeah.
So
this change in technology can have some changes in the way consumers view products or the consumer's relationships with products. One of the things that technology usually causes is things to get cheaper. That as we get better at manufacturing an item, as it moves through its product life cycle, it gets cheaper to manufacture. The prices go down. The definition of what quality means changes.
Well, yeah. I mean, just every single thing that you can buy now, there's always going to be somebody who's going to say that it was better back when, or now it's even better. So, just depends on who you ask.
Well, just think, like the change in technology and what makes quality depending on technology is like in your car, your car right now, Matt, do you have a touch screen?
I do. Yeah.
Do you have Bluetooth integration with your smartphone?
I do. Yes.
Now, and that's like kind of like this standard is like, well, I got to have Bluetooth.
Well, yeah, I can't imagine not having Bluetooth anymore. Just to be honest, I've been spoiled.
And so that's become a marker of quality. It's like, well, if they don't have Bluetooth, it's not even in the consideration set.
Well, it used to be if you just had a CD player or if you had a multi-disc CD player, and now they don't even put them in. So,
well, as someone whose first car had an 8-track, it's like,
yeah, mine was a cassette deck, but yes, I get it.
Okay, so we talked about these things a little bit. Another area, or another thing that affects our business decisions is competition. And there's some different types of competition, just some ideas to be familiar with. I'm going to start at the bottom and work my way up.
Okay.
So monopoly, we have one person who sells this product. If we have one person who sells the product, Matt, who has all the power?
The seller.
Yes.
Yeah.
Think about your situation for cable TV or your most of your utility providers. Can you go to Georgia Power and say, you know what, I'm tired of you guys. You've given me bad service. I'm gonna go to Duke Energy.
Typically not. In fact, some municipalities have made it so that even if you put solar panels on your house, they're going to tax you for the energy that stuff produces.
Right.
So, yeah.
So that's one seller. We have oligopolies. This is where we have a few sellers. So we have a few people, and we have a few people who control a market, and as such, it's not, the amount of control isn't as strict as monopoly, but still, if you think about
like cell phone companies. They all pretty much have the same exact thing going on. You have a few that might go rogue, but that's because they're trying to enter into the market typically.
Now, here's where monopolistic competition. This is where we have many sellers with products that are essentially equivalent. And what marketers try to do is we try and give you a reason to buy our product versus why our product is better. Now, on most objective scales, the products are pretty much similar, but we're always looking for that edge to make us choose our product. So if you go in a restaurant, Matt, mm-hmm. What kind of ketchup is likely to be on the table if they have bottles of ketchup?
Pretty much it's going to be Heinz.
Right. They've done a fantastic job of marketing themselves as the premium ketchup. If you think about it, ketchup is basically ketchup. There's not a huge amount, but as the brand that most people are going to choose by default, Heinz is better.
Yeah, I mean, if I see catsup on the table,
Right. I got another one. You go into a restaurant, any kind of restaurant, and what is the most likely brand of hot sauce they're going to have on the table if they have a bottle on the table?
Well, usually Tabasco. I
Yeah,
mean,
Tabasco. It's the default. You know,
yeah,
it's like, and so they've done a great
it's
job
the
of saying,
standard bearer of
yeah.
hot sauces, pretty much.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then pure competition is a situation where we have a lot of sellers selling undifferentiated products. And this is a very rough market to exist in because the only thing you really have to sell by is price. So
Yeah.
if I'm a farmer and I grow corn and my neighbor across the street grows corn, whoever, and we're growing identical strains of corn in an identical climate, basically whoever is cheapest is going to sell the corn and sets the price.
Yeah, which is why situations like that, they tend to go into co-ops.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, it's too difficult to sit there and compete against each other.
It's
in that type of
pure competition is a very, very harsh environment.
Right you are, Ken.
Yeah. Another thing that affects our businesses are regulation. We don't have any, laws get passed. We have to respond to them. It's funny, the laws they list here in the book are wildly out of date, almost 100 years old. And, if anything, there is some need for some updated regulation to more reflect the times we live in. But, each of these is important from a business point of view because you have to respond. If a law gets passed, here's a good, for instance, Matt. So during the lockdown for COVID, that restaurants were really struggling to survive.
Yeah.
And one of the areas that restaurants make money is selling alcohol.
That they do.
Could
About 50% of their revenue.
What's that?
About 50% of their revenue.
Right. Could they sell alcohol for carryout?
Typically, no. Most states, it was dine in. I mean, you're not selling any to-go orders for booze.
And that's just a regulation. Restaurants can't sell carry-out alcohol. Well, that changed in a lot of markets in order to help restaurants survive, but that was a regulatory change. No single restaurant could just start selling alcohol and say, we're going to do this now.
No, it was something that was put pressure on, and I think once the floodgates open, good luck shutting it.
Yeah. Now, other types of regulatory environments are things like trademarks and copyrights. So trademarks are really important because it's the way to, no one else can use my product or my name or can't use my intellectual property to make money off of. But you have to protect it because if you don't protect it, it can become generic. So look at all of these products here, and for the students who are listening, when you go to put something to cook, a pot roast, do you put it in the slow cooker or do you put it in the crock pot?
Well, exactly. It's just become synonymous with the slow cooker as the name crock pot.
Do you go out and throw the plastic gaming disc or do you go out and throw the Frisbee?
Well, obviously the plastic gaming disc. No, it's always a Frisbee. Doesn't matter what brand.
Do you pull a popsicle out of the freezer or do you pull a frozen juice treat?
Well, exactly. And there's, that's a great catch about it is that your name becomes synonymous with it, like Clorox and bleach.
Right.
Xerox and photocopying.
But if you don't trademark your name, other people can use those.
Yeah. Can
use those terms.
Yeah. And you want it so that when they see Clorox, they know which one they want.
Right.
So,
here are some laws that protect intellectual property, patent rights, my technology copyright, my intellectual property, all digital Millennium Copyright Act, virtual or online intellectual property. All these things play an important role in either protecting our products or protecting our consumers. Which leads into the next idea, which is consumerism, which is a movement or an idea that consumers have rights. And since consumers have rights,
How
they can
dare
be
they?
protected.
Yeah. Well, and that's a good thing too. Before the consumers had rights, it was just kind of the Wild West with whatever you gave them. So,
If I order something in the mail and it comes in and it's not what I ordered, I should have recourse to get my money back.
yeah, I agree.
Yeah. So we talked a lot about regulatory forces, laws being passed. One of the ways that businesses deal with this situation, and here's one of my favorite things to say in business classes about laws. All laws are bad. Now, and let me qualify that. Laws are written after something has happened. And usually they're written after something has happened by someone who doesn't understand the problem. I mean, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I mean, they are typically reactionary, and it's not always looking at it, just fixes the symptom, not the root cause.
It's okay, we're going to just end, the law is written to end this particular problem. And it's written by a lawmaker, not someone who's an expert in the field. So smart industries always focus on self-regulation, which is we're going to create a code of ethics. We're going to create an acceptable way of doing business. We're going to create a sustainable business model. And we're going to encourage people in our industry to follow this. And so when you see things like the TV ratings or the movie ratings, like, is this movie acceptable for children? Is this movie rated R? Well, that's a movie industry rating to allow people to decide if that material is acceptable for children or not. But otherwise, they get wildly criticized, for doing things like corrupting the morals of the youth.
I mean, come on.
So by creating these rating boards, they're self-regulating. Smart industries do that.
Yeah. The National Restaurant Association, with their ServSafe program, really helped push things so that way they regulated what the standards were.
Right. We are restaurant people. We know what the reality of working in a restaurant is. We want to serve safe food. Let's try and find a way that's practical to do it. Ethics. I always like talking about ethics.
Ethics is one of the funner subjects to talk about because it's all a matter of perception too.
Yeah. So these are our moral principles and values that govern our actions. And there are lots of things that go into ethical marketing behavior. So, and think about this. If I want to sell a product, one of the easiest ways to do it is to lie.
Obviously. I mean, this product will make your hair grow just like mine.
Yeah, and it's but that's unethical. And so we're gonna talk about some of the things that play into ethics. So there's your societal culture and norms. What's acceptable in your society?
Yeah.
How much skin should be covered? Depending on where you are in the world, if you watch a commercial on TV, it can be wildly different.
Well, yes. If the students ever go on to Nick at Night and watch I Dream of Jeannie, tell me how many belly buttons you see despite it being a midriff shirt.
How many?
No, zero. Because seeing a belly button was considered risque.
It was obscene to show a belly button on TV.
Yes. Oh my goodness, you showed an ankle. How dare you?
Well, right? I always like when you're traveling abroad and so if say you're in a Middle Eastern country, you're not going to see a woman on a commercial, or very rarely. Yeah. And you're definitely not going to see one who's uncovered.
Yeah.
Depending on the country. When I say Middle Eastern, I'm being way too
general
there. But
it's just it is, every culture is going to have its own norms, and it can change even in the United States from area to area what's deemed acceptable.
So Matt, have you ever gone to Europe?
Yes, I have. Yes.
You ever seen commercials in Europe?
Yeah, yes, I have. I know where you're going. Yeah.
Sometimes you're sitting there watching it, it's like, is this a soft-core movie or is this a commercial? Because I don't know what I'm watching here. As a conservative American person, that's kind of the response. But the cultural norm is different.
Well, yeah, it's not seen as obscene for certain things to be shown.
So
Yeah.
we also have like your business culture, industry practice. Like, what is the norm in your industry? What sort of behavior is accepted or not? You know, we think like lawyers and doctors all have very strict codes of ethics on how they're expected to behave. Professors have strict codes on how we're expected to behave.
Let's look at like social media. It's relatively new. And when it first started off, it was kind of a wild west on what they did with it. But the more it is integrated into our lives, the more they regulate privacy concerns and things of that nature. Though it doesn't always feel that way.
And then we have like your corporate culture at, you know, whatever your place of work or employment is. Like our particular business, how are things done here? I know, you know, my wife's company, they just had a big rollout on racial inequality and the sort of behavior and language that was acceptable and not. And like they have a zero tolerance policy within the company, like zero, nothing, nada. And, you know, that is that's their corporate culture.
Yeah.
So culture, you know, and societal values, you know, these are the things, they all kind of come together to make us who we are. It's things like food and music and literature and the way we dress. It's all these things that kind of work together to create this backdrop of how individuals develop. But it's important to remember that almost none of that is absolute. It's all kind of fluid and relative and can change situationally and over time.
Well, that's the great thing about it. I mean, when you're young, most of your culture, it's, as it says here, learned and shared from your immediate family, maybe your friends. But the older you get, hopefully the more you grow as a person and you go experience new things and you take on the best of other cultures. Hopefully you leave the worst and just kind of put it to the side. But, you know.
Yeah. So let's see. Now, one idea here that is just sort of like a change in the idea of marketing ethics is this idea of caveat emptor. You know what caveat emptor means, Matt? No.
Let's go with no. But I'm gonna guess it's probably something to help out the buyer.
So it's like, you know, if you buy something, the responsibility is on you. So if I say, hey, this car is in great condition and is like new, and you buy it and you get it home and you find out that it's a rust bucket, hey, that's on you, buddy.
Well, yeah, I mean, the whole kicking the tires, especially if you're buying used from somebody, you know, you need it. But the onus is on you to do your homework.
But for a long time, the idea, you know, marketing ethics kind of lived by this rule of we can say anything, we can do anything, and the responsibility is on the buyer to conduct their own independent research to make sure that things are truthful. Which, if you think about it, is essentially a very dishonest sort of.
Yeah, this Ford Pinto 1975 is going to last you a lifetime.
Yeah. Well, that's entirely possible because it's likely going to burst into flame and you'll burn up in it. But so in 1962, during the Kennedy administration, one of the things they came up with was what was called a Consumer's Bill of Rights. And this is really kind of simple ideas that make sense. One, if you buy a product, generally it should be safe.
Yeah, people don't understand like how far cars have come since my childhood. I remember not having to sit in a car seat.
Right.
You know, and now you have airbags that completely engulf you. If you operate your vehicle properly, wearing your seatbelt, you don't have anything disabled, the chances of you surviving almost anything is amazingly higher than it used to be.
But, you know, this is like just the idea of safety, like a very minimum level of safety. The product should be safe to operate.
Yeah.
You know, that not that you can't be injured in it, but basically by default, using a product, it shouldn't be dangerous.
Well, yeah, children's toys.
Yeah.
The choking hazards, right? It's all aged out and everything.
Lawn darts. So lawn darts are a product that were
I
taken off the
can't believe
market.
they were a thing. I'm just going to put that out there.
Okay, this is a foot-long weighted projectile that's sharpened on one end. It is a dart. It's a foot long that kids are supposed to put circles on the ground, and each one of them stands on opposite ends of the yard and throw weighted, sharp projectiles towards each other. Now, and I played with them when I was a kid, never got hurt. But if you think about it, there is potential for danger here. And people, kids got killed. They were hit in the head by these weighted flying projectiles with points on them.
I'm just saying, like, who came up with that and was like, you know what we should do? We should thin out the herd by throwing these giant darts clear up in the air where you lose sight of it and everybody's just running out of their way to get away.
Yeah. So one of the parts of the Consumer Bill of Rights, product should be safe. Another part of the Bill of Rights, you should have the right to choose. So if you go and say, hey, you go into the store and you buy a Coke and they put a Pepsi in your bag, it's like, no, that's not what I wanted. I want my money back.
Yeah.
You have the right to the product of your choice.
Well, yeah. And I mean, not to go back to cars too much, but you go to a car lot and you pick out a car, and that's the car you want, they're not going to give you a different car.
Right. You have the right to be informed. So does this food contain an allergen? Basic information like that.
Yeah. And
you have the right.
They have all the labels and everything that tell you what's in it.
You have the right to be heard. That if your product is defect, you're a consumer, you buy something, and there's a problem, you have a right to reach out to the company and air your grievances and give them an opportunity to correct it.
Yeah, you don't even have to wait for Festivus to do this either, which is amazing.
I just went through this. I ordered a pair of sunglasses, and they came in broken. And so it's like, all right, got to go to the company. What are you going to do? They came in broken.
Now, did they make it easy for you?
It's kind of interesting. I went and used their only way I could interact with them was through automated website. And so I put in there that I wanted a repair for my glasses. And then like 2 days later, I got a notification online saying that my status had been changed to replaced. And it's like, nothing's been replaced and nothing's been repaired. So I had to email them and say, what does this mean? It says that my glasses have been replaced, and they haven't. And they said, oh, sorry for being unclear. We've mailed out a replacement pair to you. It's like, but they didn't tell me that.
Yeah. And that's also comes down to like just clear communication. Even though we have all this great AI and crap, if you cannot clearly communicate to your consumers, they're going to get frustrated and upset. And it's no fault of their own or your own that just automated responses are limited in what they can do.
So, other things about ethics and marketing, your corporate culture, how your particular company, I mentioned my wife's company, what your culture is, what the expectations are. Wells Fargo, for instance, has been in a lot of trouble in the last few years because their loan officers were making fake loans and charging people money, and it had to do with the CEO tried to deny it, but it's clearly a reflection of the culture they had created.
Well, yeah, when you and same thing happened with the VA, where you put certain bonuses set to unrealistic goals, people are gonna suddenly
do whatever you pay them to do.
Yeah, pretty much. They'll do what they can to maximize their own pay.
Yeah.
And it's not always ethical.
So codes of ethics, these are rules of behavior, statements of principle on how you are to behave. So Matt, I'll give you for instance, as a college professor, I know that you are bound by a code of ethics. You're also bound by a law. But if I were a concerned parent about my kid, could I call and ask you to tell me their grade?
You could call and ask. It doesn't mean that I'll give it out to you.
Why not?
Well, if the student all of our students they're adults. They have a right to their privacy, and they are bound by, what is it? FERPA?
Yeah.
Sorry. HIPAA, FERPA, all these kind of blend in. By FERPA, and the student has to have on file a signed waiver, and typically it will spell out exactly who you can give the information to and when.
And so that's an ethical consideration. We have codes of ethics that companies or businesses or industries use. A parent may want to know how their kid is doing in school, but there's also good, reasons why maybe that's not good to reveal. And what the code of ethics does is it kind of spells out the guidelines. And, when you get into this gray area, this is how you should respond. And there, another kind of ethical gray area is the question of whistleblowers, which is if you're in a company and there is something or an industry or a business or an organization, and there's something that's being done that is illegal or wrong, and you can't go to your superiors because maybe they're involved with it or they're non-responsive, and you can notify someone and you're legally protected.
Yeah, usually this is like
environmental protections. This is very common.
yeah.
Also
where you raise the red flags within the company and they're clearly just trying to cover it up, and you're protected when you go to a regulatory agency to
you should, and I'll encourage the students to do this. Google largest whistleblower settlements. The way the law is written now, if you're a whistleblower and let's say it's a financial institution, or if there's a monetary penalty involved, like there's a fine. If you're the whistleblower, you get a percentage of the settlement.
I'm just waiting to find something wrong with something.
Well, if you read it, some of the largest settlements out there are in the 9 figures.
Wow.
Like literally $150 million whistleblower settlements.
Wow.
To encourage people to report bad behavior.
But that also encourages companies to be on their best behavior, hopefully.
Exactly. So, how do we make these ethical decisions? I'll give you two approaches. One is we have moral idealism, which is that certain positions are absolute. Like, you shouldn't kill someone.
No, I completely agree.
That's moral idealism. Now, on the other hand, what if it's in self-defense?
Well, I mean, shouldn't you turn the other cheek?
Yeah. So yes, so moral idealism, murder is wrong, but, so then we have utilitarianism, which is whatever does the most good for the most people, that's the right thing.
Oh, utilitarianism. How it can go so wrong so quickly.
Yeah. It's like, well, okay, I can understand whatever's going to benefit the most people is what you should do. But it's also, okay, I've got a child playing in the middle of the street.
Yeah. And
over here, I've got a crowd of people standing on the sidewalk and I have no brakes. Yeah. Who do I run over?
You don't want to be the one who has to figure out if you need to pull the switch or not. Am I right?
Yeah. So the utilitarian answer is you run over the kid, and that's,
yeah. But, the sidewalk was full of horrible people. Who knew? Right.
Yeah. So again, all these, they're always, it's a way of thinking. It's a way of working through problems, but you have to understand that there's always a consideration, a counterpoint.
And that's one of the issues with the automated cars is that they have to sit there and calculate the least harm. And
that is actually why we don't have automated car. The technology exists now.
Yeah.
But the thing is, if I write the program that says you run over this person or that person, I can now be sued.
Yeah. Nobody wants to do that. Yeah.
Yeah. Nobody wants that responsibility.
Mm-hmm.
Social responsibility is the idea that we should leave the world at least as good a place as we found it, and we should try and improve the world if we can.
Seems fair enough.
So different kinds of responsibility, profit responsibility, and this is the traditional idea of business: is we exist to make money for our stockholders.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, we have to make money. Otherwise, we can't be in business. Makes
But
sense.
what about then that we start broadening that idea? What about stakeholder responsibility? And stakeholders are anybody that is affected by my business. So the employees, the managers, the customers. How much responsibility do I have to these people? So stakeholder responsibility. I should probably operate my business in a safe way so that my employees aren't poisoned by working in the environment.
I would hope so. Yeah.
I shouldn't have them removing asbestos without a respirator.
It does save on for your stockholders, though.
But that's the thing, is if I'm only looking at profit responsibility, then everything else gets a pass. And they're like, oh, it's unsafe. It's all these other. And then as we get bigger, we move beyond the stakeholders' societal responsibility. Do I have an obligation to?
So we shouldn't pollute the water.
Yeah, what's good for society? So my business makes money, but it does so. It also poisons the water and poisons the air. Do I have a responsibility for the community that I'm part of not to do that?
I would say yes, but that's just me.
Big idea is currently is what's called sustainable development, which is where you walk the tightrope, where you are both conducting business in a way that makes money, but you're leaving the world basically at least in the same condition it was when you came in.
Yeah.
You're leaving something for future generations to be able to use to make money as well.
Yeah. Oh, and it's 90% of us are concerned about working conditions outside the U.S.
Yeah.
I wonder how many are actually concerned about the working conditions in the.
All right. Well, that's it for chapter 3.
Excellent. Well, this was fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we'll do chapter 4.
All right. Bye.